Hey everyone, here with Roger Drummer this morning. Roger, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great.
A couple years ago, when we first started doing blog posts, we had an article that was posted, and at the time, it was 11% of the population uh, basically had some sort of dementia or Alzheimer's. And you're telling me now that it's more like 15%. Is that true?
Well, it was 11% of the people over 60. So you figure the people nearing retirement age, 11% at that time were beginning stages of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's probably up around 15% now because it's growing all the time.
That's pretty amazing. And I think a lot of it has to do with the food that we eat and you being the stress expert, I'm sure stress has a lot to do with it too. But what's your take on food and stress and keeping the brain healthy?
Well, the reality is no one knows exactly what causes Alzheimer's or dementia or memory loss in general, but it is related to inflammation. And there's certain things that just cause inflammation in your brain right away. One of them, sugar. That's why I always talk to people about getting on a protein breakfast and getting off of sugar. Second thing is chemicals in your food. Pesticides, flavor enhancers, MSG, aspartame. They're famous for actually destroying brain function. And it gets worse when you're under stress. Because stress does this thing to your system where it weakens the blood-brain barrier, that natural barrier you have in your brain that protects it from outside chemicals. And so more of it makes it up into your brain. And then if you have a high level of stress hormone, for some reason the hippocampus area of your brain, which is like your memory center, it's the center that accesses memory and creates some neurotransmitter activity, that particular part of your brain becomes more susceptible to chemicals when there's a high level of stress hormone. So it almost becomes like a sponge for soaking up all the chemicals that make it into your brain. So it's very important to eat a natural diet, stay away from any food additives, but especially aspartame and MSG, and just eat clean.
Hey Roger, I always hear you talk about aspartame, and I know there's a lot of people that are really addicted to sodas. Give us your take on diet sodas and what they actually do to the brain. What happens to the neurons when they drink that aspartame?
Well, there was a doctor named Russell Blaylock who wrote a great book called Excitotoxins, and it turns out MSG and aspartame both are listed as excitotoxins, meaning they excite your neurons in your brain to the point of death. A little bit of it, like MSG, you'll get something called glutamate, which is an amino acid, glutamic acid, in your diet and in protein foods, and a little bit of it stimulates a little activity in your brain. Well, MSG, and aspartame does the exact same thing, is an overload of it. So what happens is your neurons fire very, very rapidly until the point of exhaustion, and then they fall over and basically die. And then they create a kind of a radiating out inflammation in your brain, which causes brain damage. So you might lose a few 100,000 neurons in your brain when you're eating a heavy MSG or aspartame soda. But the fact is you have billions and billions of them, so you might not notice it until you're 50. And then all of a sudden you have the big drop-off, and usually that's like falling off a cliff. You can't get back up on top of the cliff.
So what you're saying is they're not really repairable, or they don't replenish themselves? Once they're dead, they're dead?
Those particular ones are gone, yeah. You can create new neurons, and your brain can regenerate if you're doing the right things.
And what are some of the right things that we should be doing?
Well, you have to have nutrients in your diet that your brain actually needs or has to have for normal function. You have to have a diet that has omega-3 fatty acids in it. You have to have fatty acids from fish, in particular DHA. Your brain loves it. Your brain also actually likes cholesterol, because cholesterol helps the neurons in your brain communicate. And so taking drugs to lower it abnormally can interfere with your brain function. But your brain likes fat, and your brain likes certain fatty acids, loves coconut, medium-chain triglycerides that are in coconut and palm oil, loves a lot of nutritional fats, but most people, because of the low-fat diet, are really not feeding their brains, which makes it more susceptible, again, to chemicals and inflammation.
One thing I found interesting too is we had talked about foods that you eat, But as far as like fast foods or takeout, you had told me one time how styrofoam affects the brain, the chemicals in styrofoam, and how it gets, leaches into the food that we eat, including, coffee in a styrofoam cup. Why don't we talk about it all the time, but tell our audience, what actually happens with styrofoam and hot coffee and styrofoam.
The whole thing about that is that most man-made chemicals that make it into your brain cause inflammation. Styrofoam, I just imagine, would be one of those. But people are so used to buying coffee in styrofoam cups and their takeout food in styrofoam trays and getting, eating off styrofoam plates. And the reality is, anytime anything hot hits that plate or that cup or that container, it leaches chemicals into your food. So you're getting an extra dose of chemicals. The best thing you should do if you're ever going to stop at a coffee shop regularly to get coffee, take your own cup with you. Ceramic cup. It tastes better anyway.
And it was interesting, too, you were telling me about when you add cream in hot coffee in a styrofoam cup. Explain that one.
Well, actually, the cream, because it's a fat, it just helps you to absorb the chemicals better. So if you really want to absorb a lot of styrofoam, then get a piping hot cup of coffee and pour a lot of cream in it, especially the artificial cream that has its own chem load in it, So you can get a really big whammy of just health-destroying chemicals all in one cup.
Roger, we talked about the styrofoam, but one thing I wanted you to mention was how unaware people are with the Teflon and how bad that is for people cooking with Teflon and brain issues.
Well, one of the things that really shocks me is when I'm talking to friends or stopping by people's houses and they're eating organic food, taking supplements, they're into herbs, clean water, and they're cooking with Teflon. And I know they've heard about it because, gosh, it was 10 years ago, I think, was in the news that the companies that originally made the non-stick cookware covered up all the information showing how damaging it was to your system and how it could be causing cancer and other issues. But so the government fined them and then issued a statement where they're going to try and get it all off the market within a few years. But, because it's big business, it never disappeared. And so it's kind of just been forgotten about, and people are cooking with it all the time. It's one of the worst things you can ever do for your system. You just accumulate so many toxins into your food by cooking with it.
It's funny. I know it's a convenience because we were using Teflon. We were unaware until I'd met you and you made us much more aware. But we tried the porcelain cookware, and it's not the same as Teflon. We tried the cast iron, which now we're used to. But for a while, it was a little bit of a challenge because it's slightly different techniques. And I know you use cast iron as well.
Well, the interesting thing is that porcelain is not good for frying things like eggs and different things you don't want to stick, but it's really good for cooking other things. I have a cast iron skillet that I'm planning on using for the rest of my life because it works so perfectly well. I know how to heat it up and how to oil it just right to put anything I want in it, and it won't stick. And I rarely have to clean it out. I just wipe it out. But you have to take some time.
We're going to have to give some cooking tips in the future because I know a lot of people, it is difficult to convert when Teflon's so easy to use, but I also see people, I go into friends' homes and they'll have Teflon pots and pans, and you'll see the bottom metal of the pan because the Teflon's scraped off, and that's even more dangerous.
Oh God, that's the worst. Those pans you shouldn't even be using those to feed your pets. They should go in the trash. People just need to get rid of it. I mean, it's an adjustment like everything else, but I tell you, I am so good at making eggs and different things in my cast iron skillet that I never have a problem with it. It all has to do with temperature and how you actually season it and get it to where it works perfectly fine.
Well, I'm looking forward where we could do a couple of videos, cooking videos, because you've got some great recipes, but you also use the right cooking utensils so you don't damage the body and the brain.
Well, you know what? I love to eat breakfast, so I can show you how to make eggs.
Yeah. Awesome. Roger, I got to tell you, I really like the simple way you explain things and the simplicity of it, and it's information that we could use every day. I'm really excited to be doing this series and helping people get them educated about the simple little things they can do every single day to make a difference for their health. So we really appreciate you. And any last words?
No, you just be surprised how doing one little thing at a time over a period of a few months will radically change your diet and your exposure to chemicals.
Roger, really appreciate it. Again, till next time, and thanks for all your great info.
You're welcome.
Take care.